Welcome to the Authentic Dentist Podcast. Join Dr. Allison House of House Dental in Scottsdale and Shawn Zajas, founder of Zana, a company helping dentists extend their care beyond the chair as they lead dentists deeper along the journey of authenticity to reach greater fulfillment in their professional lives and to deliver remarkable patient experiences. At the core of the Authentic Dentist is a belief that the answer to the current challenges in dentistry is dentists discovering that their greatest asset and point of differentiation is their personal brand, and that forming that brand out of their authentic selves is the best strategy for success in dentistry today.
Hey guys, this is Shawn Zajas and Dr. Allison House with the Authentic Dentist Podcast. And as a follow-up to last week, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we're going to be finishing up by kind of a reflection and workshop off what we were talking about with language, because you were bringing up the power of language. And I'm trying to think of, I don't remember the source of inspiration. Was it something about athletes? It was something you read? Do you remember?
I actually don't remember. I'm sorry, Shawn.
That's okay. So it brought us into the conversation, and I remember vividly seeing, okay, so if using kind of the language metaphor, we're writing, if our life is a book and this next chapter of our life is kind of a new destination that we're wanting to arrive at, then part of the language we use is going to be the bridge that can help us get there. So to overcome in a certain area or to, break into a new, paradigm or something like that, like what language is no longer going to serve us? I think part of the example is like, if somehow, when you're a mom and dad and you're in the trenches and you're changing diapers and staying up and just the whole thing of being a mom and dad actively, you're exhausted. Like exhaustion would be a word, like a banner that would be like a theme over that time in your life. It's like practically unavoidable. But what happens if you get out of that season of your life, but you don't ever challenge the fact that you still let that be over kind of a theme? Like, oh, I'm just exhausted all the time. It's like, why?
I think you're right. I think if you describe yourself in a certain way, you become that way. Exhaustion is one that people use. Tired. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. And if every time somebody says, how are you? And you say, I'm so overwhelmed. Well, then you are. If you have to change the language. I have patients that are so cool. I say, how you doing? And they say, I am so good. I don't know if I could be any better. That is some powerful language. I was like, I don't know if I could utter that, but they say that all the time. Or I'm getting better every day. Those are great things instead of so tired and I'm overwhelmed, because it's describing who you are and who you're presenting to the world.
So this is a very interesting take that I'm sure people are familiar with. But so even biblically, if we go back to Genesis, like God actually had Adam name things. He brought the animals before him and Adam like spoke them. So there's something there about like us as like co-creative beings, that when we speak, we create. And yet that's where it's like, I've been tired the last decade in my life. And I think I bemoan that all the time. Oh, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired. And it wasn't until I heard, Patrick Bet-David just say, like, that's the T word in his family. What the heck, the T word? Like, what? I've never heard of a T word. And I realized I casually allow that to come out of my mouth.
And then it defines you.
Yeah.
We had a lot of words growing up in my household and in my childhood household that you wouldn't utter. The one that I didn't have in my house was skinny. You weren't allowed to say that somebody was skinny or thin, because it shouldn't be a good thing. You were supposed to be fit. And in fact, my friends from Britain say you're mad fit. That's a great way to describe people. Or an athlete. That's another thing. We described people, if you work out, you're an athlete, because then you sort of own that you're an athlete and you treat your body like an athlete. Rather than skinny sounds like you don't eat. No, of course I eat. I eat healthy because I'm an athlete. The other one when I was a child is you never said you were bored. And you had said the same thing. If I told my dad that I was bored, he was like, oh, we will fix that. There's wood to be chopped. There's some dishes that need to be done. You can go scrub the driveway. I mean, there were things that need to be. Never would you ever say you were bored. And you were the same way growing up, I guess.
Well, it's just one of those things with my kids. Every time they're like, Dad, I'm just bored. I'm like, if you're bored right now, it's because you're boring. Like, I want them to realize
Different take, but yeah.
You can be intellectually stimulated. Life is too short to not pursue some curiosity, some outlet for like, there's never enough time. That's why I love road trips or even being on a plane, because I'm forced to do nothing. But no, if I'm flying, I can actually read. But if I'm driving, all I can do is start like getting to be with myself, settle my thoughts. I can't do anything. And we're in such a time right now where doing is so high on the priority list. It's not about being, it's about what you do. Who you are is what you do. That for my kids that aren't under that yoke yet, they don't have to produce. They're not producers. You have a moment and you're saying you're bored, use it. Like, do something. Oh, it's unacceptable. Okay, so here's the workshopping part. Think of 3 words that aren't coming into this new chapter, and think of 3 words that are going to. So I'll start. I don't have this prepared because we both dropped the ball, but
Life happens.
One of the words that I wouldn't want has to do with probably energy management. So I'm guessing it is probably the T word. I don't want to talk about how tired I am in this next chapter of my life. I can't think of another 2 right now. So let me go to one that I can think of. So for the positive, it has to do with consistent. I think when it comes to my capabilities, I've seen myself as creative wins seem like they come and go, which isn't true. I have ideas all the time. But I know to get to where I want to go, consistency is going to be something that I need to implement more of and become more of. So consistency, or consistent, would be a word that I'm going to embrace.
I think abundance is a word. We talked about this.
Not the one that you're wanting to get rid of, right? Like, you want to embrace this one.
I would embrace this one. Abundance.
Meaning
there is more than enough. So scarcity would be the one that I want to get rid of. And I think for me, looking back, scarcity is something that I thought of all the time in terms of time and money and resources. But in 2024, especially if you really think about it, I was born in 1973. So in 1984, when I was a kid, I didn't have a cell phone. There was no Google. If I wanted to know something, my dad would send me to walk to the library, which was quite a few blocks away. I'd have to do the Dewey Decimal System, look something up, get a book. The abundance of information that we have today is mind-boggling. It's amazing. And the abundance of resources, and even the abundance of time that this saves, that I don't have to walk to the library and look something up. And so this notion that we're in such scarcity, it's not a good notion. There is abundance. There's a lot of abundance of resources, and time has been given to us.
Okay, so I'm going to give some pushback on the specificity. So
okay,
when it comes to scarcity, what practical language could come out that would come from a place of scarcity that you want to part ways with?
The overwhelmed, I think.
Okay. So I'm overwhelmed. So that
I'm overwhelmed.
Okay.
Which means that there's not enough time. Time is a scarcity. And when you were raising 2 kids, I ran a practice, was married. I was very involved in my profession with the Dental Association. It seemed like time was scarce. But the reality is that those things are changing. My practice is more mature. My children are adults. I have more time. Time is more of an abundance, and I can use it the way I want to. So it's a resource that is in abundance now, and I need to look at it that way and drop the overwhelm.
Oh, I love that. Just hearing you say that was so empowering. I'm like, yeah, like, this is your life. This is your time. You have paid your dues when it comes to motherhood with sacrifice, professionally still being excellent, and yet at the same exact time being present for your kids, like being there for them. Now they're 2 amazing adults, and you have capacity.
I have capacity. which is exciting. And I have resources and knowledge at my fingertips that I didn't even have 10 years ago. It's amazing.
And you have the maturity, not that you weren't mature, but you know what I mean, to contain, to focus. Focus. That's an interesting thing. So I've realized so much of my mental workings, I guess, would be like one of the greatest challenges of mine is focusing. So I think of it like light. Creatively, if you're looking at light, it would be when it's just completely open to explore, to illuminate lots of different things because you're trying to see what's out there, what's possible. But then you need to be able to laser like focus on something specific when you're actually exploring it or cultivating it or bringing it to life. And to be able to go from broad and wide, where I'm open to lots of things, to closed, where I'm actually trying to implement a specific thing, that interplay of wide to narrow has been something that I'm good at the open. I'm not always good at the narrow. And that's where I want to implement more strategic focus in this next chapter of my life.
I think that we have a tendency to be self-deprecating. And so when we're describing ourselves to other people, we talk a little bit about our faults, and we're not as clear about our strengths. But I think it needs to shift into, at least when you're talking to yourself, that when you describe yourself, you're describing yourself as in your strengths, and that you're working in your strengths. And so less and less about, I'm a little bit shy. I am. But it's also that I'm introverted and I'm thoughtful and I'm precise. And these are good qualities. They're not bad qualities. So just shifting that mindset from I'm a little bit shy to, no, I'm an introvert. And that means I am very meticulous and precise. And that's a great thing. It just makes me different. So it's the same thing, but it's looking at yourself in a lens that makes you more powerful.
Man, again, you're just like speaking to me because so much of my part of the ways in which I use authenticity to connect with people is that I don't mind being honest about struggle. But the way in which I describe it doesn't have to be self-deprecating.
It could be, that you overcome all of this. How amazing is that?
Yeah, and just in a way of like, I can almost identify a strength. I don't
A
know.
resilience.
There's got to be a way I can communicate it so that because for me, I need to show other people, almost like to let my defenses down, that I'm not just talking about the ways in which I'm crushing it. I'm not just talking about my gifts and the strengths, because somehow early on as a kid, that was like threatening to other people. But I do want to be challenged to own my strength and my giftings and my purpose and my calling more in this season than I have in the past.
When I think about my mentors, my favorite mentors, and I'm going to shout out a couple people, Mike Thompson, Eric Curtis, Dan Clemenson. One of the things that I gravitated towards them is that they displayed everything. They were vulnerable about all of it. I am really good at this. I'm a really good dentist. I have a great practice. I'm doing great here. This is something I'm still struggling with leadership. I've overcome this. And I appreciated that transparency because it gave me the ability to be honest and vulnerable in my own struggles. But it also gave me this idea of I could become this person someday and I still won't be perfect. And that's a beautiful thing, that my mentors are not perfect. And so I will never be perfect, but I can strive for it and be more and more like them. So so I think that vulnerability can be both, that to see the transparency of you are amazing and you've been through some things, and that's pretty normal. I mean, that's most people. When somebody comes up to me and says they're crushing it all the time, I don't really believe them. But if somebody tells me that everything in their life is terrible, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure that's really true? There's probably more. We all have that broadness.
You just said it too, though. Like, you got so inspired and changed because of these mentors that modeled it. They showed you how to be strong and yet honest and real and transparent and authentic. And yet, as you model it, you give permission to other people to do the same thing. So it's wonderful that, like, I mean, I'm sure you know this, but like you're at the stage where people do look to you. You are a mentor. You are an example. And it's like,
And that's something I'm trying to embrace because I'm used to being the protege. And as I look in the mirror, I'm clearly moving into the mentor. And I love that role, but it feels a little false to me when I say it. Like, I don't know if I couldn't possibly be these people I'm talking about. And yet they were my age when I met them. So yes, I could. But embracing like who you are today. Yeah. I'm watching you crush it in so many ways. I love your toothbrushes. I tell people about them all the time. I love the program that you have, and you're very modest about it, but it was a brilliant thing. But I think you've done something brilliant and you can say it, and yet you can still say, and there's been some challenges here too, because yeah, you've lived. Me too. I've lived.
okay, and that's another thing, I guess, in my language is I actually want to talk about the things I built because I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I don't talk about them, and it's so obvious. I was just going to tell you, Allison, it doesn't serve anybody if you don't show up fully in who you are. If you downplay your light, if you downplay your strengths and the gifts literally you've been given so that, again, what are gifts meant for? They're meant to be given away so that you can empower, inspire, and help other people. And yet that's exactly what I was just going to say to you. And then I didn't expect you to throw it back to me. And it's like, if I hear those words coming off to me, that's a challenge. Like, Shawn, so why don't you share what you've built? I don't know. Like, the world doesn't win if I downplay it either.
No.
I think a lot of dentists actually need that solution that I've created. And yet I don't know how they're going to find it if I don't become a messenger for it. And yet for some reason, I almost felt Dr. Agarwal, Aditi, practice by numbers. She's the founder, also dentist. Really great analogy. Shawn, your business is in a place where it's a baby or a toddler. Babies and toddlers, if they're magnificent and amazing, still can't tell the world they're amazing and magnificent. They need parents to say, I'm signing up my child for America's Got Talent because my child is gifted. But when the child becomes a teen, they can self-promote and then into adulthood. So the second your business starts getting that traction and gets more mature, it doesn't need to be advocated for as much. But until it has a voice, that's you, Shawn. And I was just like, oh, that's so good.
That is really good. And that's again about language and how you're describing your business and yourself and your family. And if you use language that tells the truth, that's powerful, then you're describing it, but you don't have to be arrogant about it. I've accomplished a lot. I'm happy, but I mean, it's come with a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of challenges. And I'm happy to share those too.
So I think that's part of the challenge for both of us. How in our language can we incorporate strength and legitimate, like purposeful, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am, in a way that I don't, because that kind of scares me to think of.
But it honors you too, that you've done some things. And yeah, I think that you can't move forward unless you start seeing yourself as this person. And I need to start seeing myself as Dan Clemenson and Michael Thompson and Eric Curtis. And that's really hard for me. And of course, I'm not them, but I'm stepping into that role of mentorship.
Yeah, you're uniquely you, and you can mentor in the way that only you can. And that's exactly why. Like, how many young dental professionals need the perspective that you have, need the comfort that comes from, you're going to be okay.
You made a mistake? Welcome to life. I mean, you're never going to be perfect. And that's something that I think a lot of young people don't realize. And I feel like it's made it worse almost with the information that we have. There's this this bragging that we have on social media that says everything's perfect. And then you can't ever say, oh, it's not always perfect. So perfect needs to probably come out of I need to eliminate that from my vocabulary as I'm saying this over and over again.
Progress is that good enough is good enough. Something like that. Like, I'm trying to think of what would be
That's a hard thing in
a
dentistry
standard.
because the standard is perfection.
Yeah.
And it's an impossible standard. So I try and just think of excellence.
Okay.
I want to be excellent. And excellent and perfect are not quite the same thing.
Thank you for listening to the Authentic Dentist Podcast. To join Allison and Shawn on this journey, hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. Here's to your success. Express yourself fully. Live authentic.